Greetings. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. This is an unusual day, a Wednesday, October 24th for our show typically, but it was announced that Tesla was bringing out earnings 2 weeks early today. We've been kind of waiting for this for about a month and really look forward to kind of what's going on. And we wanted to review this because I think it's going to have a huge impact on the stock price and therefore an important topic for us to cover. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time on our channel, please take time to like and subscribe. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. Also note, we're on Patreon. We're also on, and could use your support there to both maintain and grow our channels so we can provide better services to you. Also wanted to note that we do a weekly photo update of our local service facility at Tesla Fan Insight at Facebook. And so I wanted to encourage you all. Thanks for the thumbs up, James Knapp. We really appreciate your support on Patreon. And that's why we're providing extra information there that we don't offer to our regular channel members. Anyway, today is a very interesting day. And there are basically 4 points that I'd like to cover when it comes to Tesla and the war with the hedge funds. So as all of you who are regular Tesla investors, etc., know, Elon Musk has been battling with the shorties or the hedge funds for years and just got in some trouble and had to pay $20 million from the company and from him to settle those issues. This is kind of a worthwhile circumstance because I believe today's earnings announcement is one of the most important to ever come from Tesla. It'll answer a lot of questions about currently where the company is and what the future looks like. So first of all, what's going to happen is Tesla's going to announce an earnings number, and secondly, they're going to announce guidance in terms of what they think the next round of earnings will look like based on how production is going. Now, the overall of this is that there may be surprises, but unlike Google and Amazon and other companies, because Tesla's announced how many cars they produced, you can kind of infer what the revenues were based on the number of cars that were produced. So the only thing I think that's unknown is were there issues that limited sales or unusual line items that might affect the profitability of the company, which I don't think is the case. And so the first part is, how were the numbers? The second part of the day is, what's the guidance? I think the numbers are really strong and good, so I think that part is helpful with the stock price. And even more important than that, I think the guidance, as Tesla is only in the 6,000 to 7,000 a week production of Model 3s currently, as the company moves towards 10,000 a week production, that's where I think the guidance becomes strong, because we now start adding sales in Europe, Asia, and other places of the Model 3. So I think there's a huge amount of good news to go into this, and therefore I think the $40 improvement of stock price yesterday was appropriate, and I think that after earnings today, I think we'll see a solid day for the stock, but I would not be shocked to see Tesla at between $350 and $380 a share by the end of the week. Actually, for two reasons. One is the earnings, etc., is going to be strong, but two, what I put in the title of this is something I call the hedge fund wars. There are a number of companies right now that have been shorting or bidding against Tesla's stock. And these hedge funds make money if the stock price falls. If the stock price suddenly starts spiking up, there are a number of firms who potentially lose a large amount of money. The clip of money losses is about $1 billion for every $10 rise in stock price. So I believe that $40 rise yesterday represents $4 billion in losses to the hedge funds. And I believe that what we're going to see is more of those losses going forward here as we look into, the next, I'd say the next 48 to 72 hours of Tesla's stock price is going to be insane. What I mean by that is that basically There are some hedge funds betting with Tesla, some betting against, and there are a number of companies that will lose a lot of money if stock price of Tesla rises dramatically. So they're going to have to figure out whether they're going to cover their position. And bottom line is, if you're a company that's betting against Tesla's stock price rise and the stock price continues to rise, you may end up losing large amounts of money. So you therefore have to think about closing out your position, which basically means that you could lose more money because the stock price continues to rise even higher. So hence, we're looking forward to high volatility in the stock price of Tesla after earnings announcements today. And if all the guidance and the earnings associated with the stock is in line with what we're expecting, I believe the stock price will rise between $50 and $70 in 2 days. So this might be a good time to get in if you're not already in the stock of Tesla. So the next thing I wanted to review is a core logic that the hedge fund manager used. So his name is Andrew Flack, and he had 4 basic points as to why he felt Tesla was in a great position. The first was there's no real competition there. All of the entities that should be coming after them continue to announce future vehicles, but haven't delivered any meaningful competition to Tesla. The second thing that he announced was that he feels that, yes, Elon Musk is smoking dope, but Tesla, and it can be a distraction along with some of the issues going on, but the issue is that while Elon Musk is smoking dope, Tesla is smoking the entire auto industry. So if you look at the numbers, there are a lot of big manufacturers, including Honda, Toyota, and BMW, whose sales of ICE vehicles have been major league affected by the growth and success of Model 3. What he's also implying by the data they're collecting is not only are you seeing purchases by people who reserve the Model 3, but there are a lot of interested parties who are cycling out of cars everywhere from Hondas at $25,000 up into $100,000 BMWs and Mercedes into the Model 3. And this kind of demand says that there's some really good news for Tesla on the horizon, and there's some really bad news for competitors. There's an interesting situation going on, which was Tesla has 100,000 vehicles deep in production and sale of the Model 3 at this point. My thumbnail assessment was half of the 350,000 subscribe or folks who put down $1,000 would be 50,000 and up, and the other half would be 50,000 and below buying customers. So it's my sense that perhaps a third of the buyers are waiting for the cheapest version of the Model 3 before they become buyers. And so it's surprising to see demand still strong in the United States and Canada for the Model 3, given that Tesla is only offering the higher line model currently. And so the suggestion for the hedge funds is they're looking beyond the hardcore Tesla folks that love Tesla and that are enjoying it into the general marketplace and seeing a large number of consumers that are moving over to Tesla from normally aspirated engines, and that the strength of that is gathering steam. And so I just wanted to sort of run this by you, because one of the question marks is it could be bad. I mean, Tesla could see cratering of demand in the United States because it's already met its demand that goes by on vehicles that were pre-ordered or people are on the waiting list. But basically, there has been no slowdown in demand. So this is actually really good news for Tesla that they're selling this well in the United States. It can be kind of bad news because there's a usable market. So if you have the 50,000 price vehicle, the usable market of buyers potentially is about 3 million vehicles. So we're in an interesting situation where if in fact the US demand is really strong, it might slow down sales in other countries because Tesla has to sort of meet the home demand at a steady pace before it can go beyond that. And that subsequently slows down trucks and other things. As we all know, Tesla's preparing for Europe in the first quarter of 2019, and I think that's still on track, but we shall see. I think that what's starting to happen is there are a lot of buyers that are showing up that weren't going to buy if they were on a waiting list or paid and had to wait months or years, but those buyers are showing up now strong to buy the car. And the value proposition of Tesla is really strong. And particularly, you'll recall that on our last show, we actually had a gentleman from Texas who went from spending $300 a month on fuel for a 90-mile-a-day trip to $30 a month. So the value proposition for a Tesla is pretty strong, even though you have to buy it, can't lease it on the Model 3 right now. And so we'll see how those answers play out this afternoon. The Andrew Lack's further conclusion was, yes, Tesla has some management issues highlighted by how Elon is handling business, but the quality of the product and the response of customers has been so strong, and the sales being lost by competitors has been so strong that it's a minor issue that there's a little bit of chaos in the management suite while customers are getting their cars in a timely fashion. You know, his final note was just the discussion we've been having for a long time, where in reality, Tesla has a pretty large advantage over competing firms. So we're safe to conclude that this advantage is going to be maintained and will be no problem going forward. And I just, unfortunately, I have a car passing me by, so I have to duck back. Sorry about that. So at any rate, the bottom line is that even hedge funds are starting to change their minds on this. And when you have hedge funds on different sides of a stock and they're battling with each other, that war can result in a temporary heavy boost in the stock price. So we saw that yesterday, and I believe what's going to happen today is the stock price with good earnings will jump $30 or $40 after market. And then don't be surprised if Tesla gets into the 380s or 390s by the end of this week in the 25th, 26th range. And then it sort of sinks back into the 340s and 350s after that. Because once the hedge funds go to battle and start to try to kill each other off, you're going to see these different tug of wars going on. And it's going to mean big moves in the stock price. And if you catch it right, it can be very lucrative. I wanted to acknowledge Bjorn Swilele, my friend from South Africa. Thanks for joining us once again. All of you that have sort of shared comments, questions would be interesting as we close out here. Typically, I try to jump into multiple issues on each of our shows. The earnings today are key important because, as you know, we're trying to figure out if Tesla's going to have to go into bankruptcy restructuring late January, early February because of inability to meet debt service. So if Tesla turned a profit currently and is able to turn a profit in the next quarter, they can meet their debt service payments so we have no issues. If they didn't, it creates other problems, and those kind of issues can roll back to impact what the stock price is, because obviously a bankruptcy situation big time hurts owners of the common stock. So there's a lot of questions that are going to be answered today on whether or not Tesla's at or near profitability and being able to use that profitability, etc. Final note on this whole thing I wanted to mention to you is there's a book called Financial Shenanigans that I want you all to Google and take a quick peek at. The reason I wanted you to look at this is that there is a PhD in finance based in the Silver Spring area who has a book that he wrote called Financial Shenanigans. So he has an accounting background, and he looks at the balance sheet of certain companies to identify whether they're behaving in accounting tricks that are bad news for shareholders and that potentially jeopardize those companies. The reason I bring up that book today and encourage you to take a peek at it is he actually has 3 pages in there on Tesla. His thesis is that when you look at Tesla's cash position, I think the number right now is $900 million. One of the numbers that they have in there is that they have about $350 million worth of Model 3 $1,000 deposits. This book was written, I guess, a year and a half ago. As we all know, 100,000 of those people already have their cars, so that's $100 million worth of deposits that were valid and already covered. The suggestion he has made is that Tesla has deposits on the books that they're counting as cash on hand to help them stave off challenges, but should they really be doing that, given that they haven't earned that cash? It's kind of a loan from their customers. And the question mark is, what if all those customers decide we don't want the car and demand their deposits back? You now have a huge problem. So when you add up the money that's been deposited on the semis, the money deposited on the Model 3s, there's, in that range of $700 to $800 million that's helping the company sort of have a good, strong cash position that they can show the world that they're viable. But it's kind of fuzzy because you're not really supposed to be counting those numbers. They're supposed to be sitting off in an escrow spot where you really aren't supposed to be touching them. But that's sort of a commingling of funds, and it's kind of working out because, there are 23% of the 350,000 people who actually put cash down, canceled it, and got their deposits back. But now that we're getting really close to sales in places like Europe and Asia, I think we're going to be adding people to those lists, which Tesla's not discussing currently, rather than it going the other way. And this is particularly the case as the semi nears its 3 to 6 month arrival. So very interesting sort of items moving in different directions today. One should consider. I believe that we're going to see a nice bump in the stock price, and then that bump is going to increase as the hedge funds go to war. So good time to get your, sort of place some extra dollars in there, make a little money on Tesla if possible. I want to thank you for all your comments and channel support of both watching. Just a reminder, your like and subscription has a huge impact on the viability of the channel. Also wanted to note we do have ads, and by watching 5 to 8 seconds of our ads, it definitely helps support the future of the channel. Also, any of your comments are helpful. We do have some really great topics. I've been surveying power companies to determine whether EVs are going to blow up the power grid as trucks and cars come on, particularly in California, which is the largest market. And that's sort of our next show that we'll be jumping into. And I believe we're going to include this post-earnings. We'll be able to do an after-earnings assessment of where things are going, and then add in a discussion of kind of what's going on with the power needs of the whole EV market and what we think is going to occur. At any rate, the final note I wanted to make is we always try to jump into a sort of health aspect of what's going on. I just had a brief meeting today with a sort of nurse physical therapist, and she shared something I didn't think of that I thought was impressive, which is that there's a product called avocado oil. So I use olive oil a lot because of the healthy properties of extra virgin olive oil. She mentioned that olive oil is really great on salads, etc., but it has a low smoke point, so it burns at a relatively low temperature. That's the opposite of the case with avocado and canola oil. So one way to be heart healthy and still have good flavor and health is to consider canola or avocado oil when you're cooking eggs or things that might have higher temperatures to be considered. Just a couple other health reminders. I just did my 20 leg lifts for the day. Encourage you to do a multivitamin or omega-3 if possible, fish oil. Don't eat within 2 hours of going to bed because that'll just lay on you and create other health issues. Just a reminder, a half-hour walk a few times a week is a great deal on the body. Look forward to all of your comments. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. Any and all comments are appreciated. We are Tesla Fan Insight to cover a whole range of EV issues, and look forward to what you guys might have to say on our comments today, particularly after we see what happens with those earnings. Thanks once again for joining us. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Please remember to like and subscribe, and really look forward to our encounter with you guys after earnings tomorrow. Have a great day, and bye for now.